Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of beer, the show of Boulder, Colorado triathletes, and the like. Today's guest is Josh Hare, the founder of Hops and Grain Brewery. Fun fact that it could have been Josh O'Hare had his family not omitted the O upon entrance into the United States at Ellis Island. What's that? Did Josh O'Hare? That sounds like a pretty relevant and a pretty great beer name. But all these years later, 6 SKUs, 6 creative beers later, and a soon-to-be released 7th, from what I understand, Josh has made an amazing beer and selection of beers that are catering to us here in Texas, but especially us here in Austin. It's an important brand, and it's an important conversation with Josh. So I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Josh Hare of Hops and Grain.
He's not going to hold back.
Never.
And there's and he's never rude. He's never,
No. He's a very articulate
he's
guy.
He's very tactful.
Yeah.
But that's what I love about him. Is
Me too.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I love just thinking back to those days where he was working in the ad space.
Yes.
And thinking when he got pissed, what happened? If AMC came to him I don't really like the way you're taking this, Mike. He's like, you know what? Fuck you. Is that what you think?
Let me fucking tell you what I think about this. Yeah.
I wonder if that's how it was for him.
But it
It's
had
gotta
to
be, right?
And I think that's why he loves what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's
because
it's all the best pieces of service industry that I think he's so well suited for.
Yeah.
But then he has a little bit more authority to say whatever the fuck he wants to say. So he can carry that as well.
And he's got a staff, so in a sense, he has a captive audience.
Absolutely, yeah,
all the time.
Yeah.
So they've got a menu, they've got a vision, and I love the motley crew of personalities over there. Where you talk about Becca or Anya or Jazz or whatever. Are you looking forward to the backbeat stuff?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see. It's been wild to I've been close with the Odd Duck and Barley Swine crew for a long time. I actually used to work with all of them at Z Tejas before I opened the brewery.
One on West 6?
Yeah, when Jack was still the executive chef there. And so it was kind of cool when I was fundraising for the brewery. I was bartending there and serving. And so all of the crew that currently works at Odd Duck and or Barley Swine,
old
all
crew.
of us kind of went off and did our own different things. So it's been fun to watch that little corridor of Lamar.
Yeah. Oh yeah. How do you feel about it? Just kind of shifting to Burnett. Well, Barley Swine specifically.
The Barley Swine piece, I think it's cool. I think that kind of the low burn areas, I guess most people out there that live there call it.
Low burn?
Yeah, the Pine House guys are close friends of mine.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know who came up with this concept of calling that 45th to 51st area of Burnett Road.
Yeah, I don't know.
Low burn, lower Burnett.
Oh, okay.
But why
did they just say slow burn or something? Right?
But I'm glad to see, that it's such a walkable neighborhood, is I'm glad to see the city focusing more on those neighborhoods than.
Well, it's really safe too.
Yeah.
I love that area. Licks over. I mean, you talk about a dream date. You don't even have to put any thought into making a date anymore. You just go to that center.
Yeah.
Go get some wine at Bufalina, maybe some tapas or like a brata or something.
Sure.
Go Barley Swine, have a full course dinner. Now they've got a full bar.
Right.
So get a little tanked.
Yeah.
Pique your interest into the moose bouche of Barley Swine and then go over to Lick.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fucking crazy how amazing that whole strip has become.
Yeah. And those are the best neighborhoods in Austin for business owners, entrepreneurs, are that very thing where you've got so many people that live right there that can get there without ever having to get on a highway. Totally. They can walk there. And
good money too. There's a lot of money in that area,
Yeah, definitely.
but also still all ranges of money, right? Like, so people that are really, really rich, but also just kind of moderate, like young professionals.
Yeah,
you know?
Like there's some old established money. There's some young, new transplant.
Right?
Yeah, it's neat. I like that area.
Very cool. Where do you live in town?
I live off of Springdale and Airport.
Okay, yeah, like you're saying east. Okay,
yeah, so we're kind of in between Airport and Mueller on Springdale.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's a neat. It's still a cool, quiet, fun area to live. It's accessible to so much, and then for me, the brewery's just right down Springdale,
and it's shifted. I mean, even that area is shifting a whole lot, man.
Yeah.
How long you been in Austin?
11 years.
11 years now.
Yeah. I moved here in the beginning of 2005 from Boulder.
Boulder.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
So well, let's take that because we have to talk about a dad bod calendar here at some point because this event's coming up here very soon. We're gonna have to talk about that, but. Boulder, that's great. So were you raised in Boulder? You a Colorado kid?
No, I was actually raised in I call it the plains of West Texas, but a town called Abilene.
I've heard of Abilene.
Yeah, it's quite a miserable place.
it's a very miserable place
to be. Yes, but I was born there, born and raised.
Yeah.
And
you go to school there?
What's that?
Did you go to school?
I did. Yeah. I was. I had one scholarship offer, and it was unfortunately at ACU.
ACU.
Yeah. So thankfully I had the wherewithal to forward look at wait, I can have my school paid for.
That's a hell of a deal no matter where you are, right?
And turns out ACU is a place that parents send their kids who are total hellions, and they just assume I'll make them go to college there, and it'll just straighten them all out.
Reform them?
Yeah.
Oh,
but
really?
Turns out all of us just find each other at ACU, and then we just raise even more
band
hell.
Together.
And,
it's actually a stronger rebel unit as a result of going. Right. So you're born in Abilene. You went to primary school, high school, and stuff there. What kind of stuff does one do in Abilene in high school? What kind of trouble can you get into there? So
I played a lot of sports and I drank a lot of beer.
But at the same time?
Shockingly. Well, I mean, not simultaneous, but they
Before or
oftentimes happened in the same day, same couple of hours.
What kind of sports?
I played soccer. That was my big, I played baseball also, enjoyed that, but it was more out of boredom than anything,
Yeah, because what do you do?
If you're not playing sports in the summer, you work. So to me, I was I'm going to find every summer league, whatever I can find,
just so I don't have
to. I still couldn't escape it. My dad was basically allowance. What the hell is an allowance?
Right.
No, you want to spend money on stuff? Cool. You can work for it, and you can make that money.
Is that a lot of lawns? I had to do a lot of lawns.
I built fences.
Did you? Oh, interesting.
It was a really cool job at the time. Looking back on it, it's funny. The guy that I worked for did not believe in power tools of any kind. So
is this hammer and nails?
Post hole diggers. We dug holes with that. We mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow with two people.
Really?
2 people in shovels, opposing each other, and we would paddle different directions.
Was there a guy playing drums to make sure you would go in the right direction?
Keep the rhythm. But it was cool. I mean, it was outside all the time. We were kind of left. He had enough crews that. We were all kind of we never had the boss around us.
Gotcha.
It was more
it's
we show up at a house, build a fence.
What 15, 16 or older?
I actually started before you could legally be paid to work.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I was 13 when I started building fences.
Damn. What kind of materials? Mostly wood or?
Yeah, all wood. At the time, it was wooden posts, wooden pickets, the whole thing. We convinced our boss to branch into metal posts,
I hear there's this thing called metal,
and they last a lot longer.
That's right.
And of course, he's like, "Well, why would I want it to last longer?"
If
a fence wears out in 15 years, it means I get to rebuild another one. But if it takes 25 years,
I'm not even going to be around.
So he was cool because he was very committed to quality, and everything was very precise. But he was, I learned a lot of frugality from that guy.
Really,
as a first
but
boss.
not cutting corners though.
No, not at all. It was more just if we buy a box of 100 nails, he wants to know how many of those didn't actually get used or how many got bent or,
Which is, we're cents we're talking about.
Pennies.
Which is amazing.
Purely pennies. And it was all to him, I think, he had this vision and idea that he was going to, completely transform America's youth one fence picket at a time. And that was what he was going to do is teach you this
guy's
honest,
name?
John Isom.
John Isom, what kind of guy is...
He's actually, it's oddly enough, he has one child, a daughter. All he ever wanted was a son that he could build fences and hand this whole thing off to. Him and his wife agreed they were going to have one child, and that was it. Mm-hmm. They had a girl. He tried to get her into fence building and It did not stick whatsoever.
It'd be hard to get even a son into fence building.
Oh, I know. Yeah, if he was my dad, there's no way in hell I would have built fences. But he basically took like every one of his employees is like bring you under my wing. I'm gonna make you my son, mentor, and teach you how life is supposed to be lived.
But I mean, like, what kind of guy gets in? So I have this preconceived notion about Abilene. I know there is a relatively like cool drinking scene there that's outside of recreational drinking while playing sports.
Right.
Which happens
as a teenager, right?
Yeah, like there's
other drinking going on.
Yeah, maybe a thoughtful scene. Sure. Put it that way, right?
Yeah.
But then I find is it really, really conservative?
It is incredibly conservative.
Right?
Yeah, it's so a couple. For instance, when I was at the university, you weren't allowed to drink alcohol,
just at all,
regardless of your age. Yeah, like
what?
If you were enrolled in the university, part of your admission documents included a signature page saying
you wouldn't drink at all.
Yeah, regardless of your age.
You know how much drinking is a part of the Bible?
Exactly.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah, it is now. That was 98, so it has since changed. You can now drink when you're of age.
Finally,
but there was also we had an Olympic-sized swimming pool, right, where we did intramural sports and our swim team practiced there.
Yeah,
there was not a men's and women's mixed swimming time allowed. Like there were separate times for men and women to swim
in the 90s.
In the 90s,
late 90s.
Yes.
Jesus, really?
And it was actually referred to as mixed bathing was what they didn't allow.
Mixed bathing?
Yeah.
Well, that actually makes it sound a lot more seedy than swimming.
I know.
It's like, I got to take my pants off to make sure I can clean all the areas.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it makes some sense. Some sense.
So, it ultimately, I think the people that stayed there,
they
either stayed. There's a lot of oil money in Abilene, so
it's pretty
lot of
rich,
like,
I guess?
and a lot of like long generational 5, 6, 7 generations of oil money. So there's a lot of kids that grow up there,
just have
and
money,
graduate from high school, and they're like, I'm just gonna go work for my dad.
Gotcha.
And then take over the family business. And
was that ever an option for you besides the fencing?
No, my dad, my mom was a elementary school teacher. My dad was a professor. Like there was
did he teach at ACU?
At ACU.
No kidding.
Yeah, how about that?
What did he teach?
So he was in psychology department.
Oh, okay.
So he taught a lot of the more like classes for, I guess, aspiring preachers.
Interesting.
But on how to counsel like marriage and family therapy and how you counsel, youth and
set him on the right path.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
He also taught this class called human sexuality.
Okay.
Which is what
That's good. Sounds good.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe not for you.
Everyone
Your
called
dad
it the sex
teaching
class. I didn't take it. I refused to take it. But there was a waiting list for that class every semester.
Why? Why do you think?
Because there's no talk of sex at ACU. There's no.
It's a vacuum.
Like, it was almost like porn to a lot of students.
Got it. Even though it's probably
their parents had
medical,
shielded them.
right?
Yeah, it's purely. Yeah, the whole thing is about like the safety and psychological effects of sexual activity before you're married.
Oh, well,
so of course all of it under the guise of wait until you're married,
right?
But they painted this more psychological, spiritual.
Was it kind of like intellectualizing it to make it seem like it's a better choice?
From what I understand, I didn't take the class again.
Yeah.
There's no way that I had already heard my dad talk about sex at one point in life. Like I went through that
once
conversation.
Once he said boner,
already.
it was over.
I was like, all right, Dad, I'm not taking your class. But everyone that took it loved it. Like they thought it was really thought-provoking, compelling.
Yeah.
My dad's always been a little bit of a rebel, so even at ACU, like he definitely pushed the button a little, pushed the envelope a little bit, and challenged kids to think about like, your family has always told you no sex, no sex, no sex. Right. Why? Like what's the harm? What's the big deal here? What's everybody so against and so anti? And so I was always very curious about the class. I just could never.
I couldn't either. Like my mom saying, "Well, this is how the penis works," and it's like, I'll Google it if that's the alternative.
That's what the Google's for, right?
I don't know. I have to go into that. But so was that something? Do you have any siblings?
I do have a twin sister.
Yeah. Same age, everything.
Yep,
from what I understand about twins.
Right.
the same age. Science 101. But was that a message that your dad kind of not preached, but that he kind of conveyed to you guys? Like, well, it's probably better to wait till you get married.
No, he was much more like, it was always posing a question. Everything was a question.
Interesting.
Like I'd show up late night, like thinking that I was sneaking in and my parents were asleep. My dad would be awake in the living room and I'd be drunk. And the first thing he'd sit down, son.
Oh shit!
How was your evening?
He was calm.
What'd you do?
Oh, no.
How'd you feel about that? Like, it was a lot of that. Like, you were being counseled all the time, So even like the early birds and the bees conversation was very much about like, it was more conversational.
Would you think you would enjoy that position?
What do you think this means?
Yes. Philosophical thread.
Right.
A psychological, like just this amazing thread that runs through all the conversations. So my mom was that same way.
Okay.
Not that she would ask me questions, but it was always about, how do you feel about this? You seem upset. Why are you upset? What are you feeling? Like, God, I don't want to talk about it, right? That's how it starts.
Yeah.
And then she keeps pressing and she keeps pressing. And by the end of it, I'm like, God, I didn't know I had daddy issues. Like, this is my mom. But do you find that you've taken that, because I do that, this other thing, I'm right here. I'm sitting here asking you plenty of questions, right? But do you find that you take that same kind of, just that stance, that paradigm when you talk to people, like, well, what do you think that would be about? What's the purpose of that?
Yeah. Oh, I try to be. I think I'm a little more like, I can be a little more hot-headed than my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Where he would he'd get worked up, but you could see he would just like center himself.
And
be like,
God, it's amazing.
Go right back. But me, I usually pop off first, and then I'm like, all right, well, so what did that sound like? How was I angry? Was that offensive?
Did you see some fumes shooting through my ears? That's how I felt. It's an interesting thing. So what did you study then at ACU?
I was in biology is what I studied.
Biology.
I ended up graduating with an education degree and a minor in biology.
Oh, no kidding.
So, yeah.
Any particular focus in the biology you found particularly interesting? Perhaps fermentation?
I was honestly much more into the environmental sciences. So that's kind of where I studied horticulture a little bit, a lot of agronomy. And so the biology component early on for me was more just, I've always been curious, and biology seemed to always answer questions for me. Where
it does. It's good
physics
for that.
was a little more difficult for me. Chemistry, like it's a little more, it's hard to just like grab in nature and see happening in front of you.
Right.
Whereas biology, like if you wait long enough, you pretty much watch all of it happen.
Yeah. That is quite amazing. Did you have the standard 4-year experience? Because you apparently had a scholarship.
I did, but
what was the scholarship in, by the way?
It was for my ACT scores.
Oh, really? So you're just an academic one.
Yeah,
you're a smart little bastard.
And I had a lot of credit hours paid for.
Oh, really?
So I actually spent 5.5 years in school.
Because it was all on someone else's tab, I guess.
It was paid for. And,
that's amazing.
So I studied. I took, 3 semesters of business classes.
Yeah.
And it ultimately came down to like, well, okay, shit, I got to get out of here. Before I have to start paying for a lot of this. What's my fastest path out?
The Iceman
all
cometh.
the different things that I've already studied, and education, sadly enough, was the fastest way out.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So when you got out, did you have that? Because that's a pretty interesting trifecta in a sense, right?
Sure.
So you've got like a minor in a sense. So you've got biology, minor in education, and then also probably some business acumen that you should come off with, which isn't necessarily helpful in biology. I guess it could, but business acumen's different.
Right.
That's for the entrepreneur, almost, and that's how to speak the speak and talk the talk and walk the walk and all of that.
Sure.
So when you get out, how are you feeling? Like, which way did you lean?
So I literally took the very first teaching job that I interviewed for, got offered, and it was in Austin.
No
so I was like, cool, yeah.
What elementary, middle school?
Middle school, 7th grade.
Very cool.
So I was actually at a Grisham Middle School.
Where's that?
Grisham's at like. You know where Westwood High School is? It's literally right behind Westwood High, off of 620 Anderson Mill area.
Oh, okay, yeah, just up the street then.
Yeah, it's not far
cool.
away from here at all. Yeah.
And so how was that? So you took the gig?
Taught for 1 year.
That was it.
And I think the little bit of business that I studied enabled me to observe the public education system as a whole. In the 1 year I was there, and was just like, fuck.
What was the main
problem? So there were a number of things for me, and I think the major turning point was, at the time, this was granted 2003. It's still very much this way, but
were
at the
you
time,
like the early 20s then?
I was,
22,
23.
23,
just turned 23.
Cool.
At the time, all of your funding, for a school district comes from test scores.
Right.
So your students have to take the standardized test at the end of the year, and that's the only way, that you get funding, or really one of the only ways that you get funding. And so as a science teacher, my whole goal in teaching science was to, I kind of took a little bit from this old fence building boss that I had, and I was committed to changing America's youth through critical thinking skills and the development of common sense, right? Which I feel like every science classroom, everybody remembers their middle school science teacher, right?
Sure.
That's where you dissect something for the first time.
Right.
It's where they're generally always like this kind of crunchy, hippie-ish.
They're gritty but yet grounded.
Right.
And
right. And very soft, very methodical, very warm. Sometimes smells of patchouli.
Yeah,
and so like I loved that because that was where I got really turned on to just like figuring out life was in science. So I thought I was going to do that. I was going to change the whole world. But I also falsely assumed that I'd be able to actually go in and develop like curriculum for my class and put together lessons. And no, not at all. Like you're given curriculum, you teach to it, you teach how to answer multiple choice questions, and that's pretty much it.
How antiquated is the curriculum?
It's pretty rough. It's especially in Texas at the time. And my understanding, at least from friends of mine that still teach, things have evolved quite a bit. Evolutionary theory, those real components of science that I think are much more thought-provoking than other areas, those were non-existent. There was no talk necessarily of evolution.
So you get in trouble if you talk about it?
Yeah, well, it didn't fit the curriculum. So it wasn't necessarily you got in trouble. It's just like, if you're going to work here, you're going to follow the curriculum. And if you get outside of the curriculum, then guess what? You don't work here anymore.
No shit.
I also, this was not part of my job offer, but I had to teach sex ed in 7th grade.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That like father, like son.
Exactly.
That is so strange.
The name of the program, Worth the Wait.
That's what it was called?
That's what it was called. I had to go to Scott and White Hospital in Temple to be trained on this curriculum. God. And it was 10 straight days.
Oh, that's horrible.
And they don't split up classes anymore where the boys go with the, coach like I remember it, and then the girls are, right. It's all your classes just like they're normally mixed.
Jeez.
So that was an eye-opener. And then, talk about antiquated. Things like, instead of saying erection, I had to say the penis stands away from the body.
That's what it is?
A wet dream is a nocturnal emission.
I remember that one.
Like
that's colorful.
In 2003, that shit is still taught.
That's insane.
And I had to recite it. I had like a book that I had to literally recite word for word.
Did you see like these kids' eyes glaze over? Because they probably know more about sex than you can even give them at that point.
Absolutely. And the questions that they would ask are just like, oh man, I'm telling you right
this
now,
isn't
not
part
a
of
piece
the curriculum,
of this curriculum is answering this question for you. But I thought I had this really genius idea, right? Because the first couple days were really quiet. No one was asking any questions. Sure. Everyone was really awkward. So I was like, I'm going to put like a shoebox, right? And I wrapped it up, put a little slit in the top, and I was like, all right, this is the anonymous question box. Like, if something happens during the day, you got a question about it,
right?
When class is over, just drop this in there. And you have my word, I will answer every question that goes into this box. Terrible mistake.
That's a big word. Yeah.
The very first day I unpacked that box, at the end of the day, there were 3 questions in there.
Do you remember
2 of them said, when was the last time you had a blowjob?
They asking you?
The third one said, have you ever 69'd? Those were the 3 questions that I got. So the next day I had to let everybody know, like, all right, so I should have clarified. These questions are not about
life
me.
Is not on the
it's
table
about
here.
The curriculum. All right. So that was kind of the beginning of the end.
And it could be the same answer for both, just in terms of efficiency.
Right. Exactly.
That's an amazing thing. But did you set them? Did they eventually take it by storm in the sense that it was meant to be like that? They were nice, thought-provoking questions.
I did finally get a few, and they continue to trickle in with the stuff more directed at me, but I got a few honest questions. And what's funny is the question would be asked, or I would give the question and then state the answer,
right?
And everyone in the class would laugh except for the one person who put the question in. So it was so obvious who asked the question, and then you'd see him like, yeah, that's funny, like trying to chime in.
Is it true if you don't use it, you lose it?
Right.
That would be my question. But that's me as an adult, like trying to be stupid and cheeky.
Right.
So it only lasted a year.
Yeah,
I mean,
year.
It's interesting because it feels like you've got a great finger on the pulse of Texas education and Texas culture. Because I moved into Texas in 97.
Okay.
And I went from Salt Lake City, which was actually a really wonderful school district, and then coming into Texas, and it was just like someone hit me over the head, and I had this malaise just the whole time. Like I was operating at 80% of what I was allowed to mentally,
Right.
And it's really strange because I love Texas, I love Austin, but hearing that it's reinforced actively with shitty curriculum. I mean, it's like not a huge surprise that Texas is a laughing stock in some areas of the world.
Yeah.
Just like can't get our shit together. But I'm still waiting to see. So you're like, fuck this. I'm smarter than this. Maybe I'm not better than this, but the kids deserve more, and I can't do it. My hands are tied.
Right.
Where'd you go?
So that's when I moved to Boulder.
Boulder.
Yeah, I packed up, moved out of my house. I had a golden retriever at the time. I still have the same golden retriever.
Oh, cool.
I was single. Packed up my dog, my 2 bicycles on top of my Volkswagen Jetta.
Yeah.
As many clothes as I could put into it. I sold everything else, and moved up to Boulder.
Moved to Boulder.
I had two buddies that I graduated from college with. Were living there. They had a roommate that was getting ready to move out, so they're like, "Yeah, in about 4 months we'll have a room open."
Oh, cool.
But right now we got a couch.
Deal.
Like, cool.
And Boulder's
Done
I love
deal.
Boulder. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a neat city. And back in when I moved there in 05, not 05, I'm sorry, in 03. So it was the end of that same year. It was really, really. I'm not going to say it's totally different than it is now. I hate when people say that about it.
You're right.
But it is completely.
Different stage.
It was much smaller. It was much less developed. There were still actually people that lived in Boulder that grew up in Boulder, which is almost non-existent at this point.
Oh.
Kind of like Austin. It's tough to find
absolutely
the few people that were actually born and raised here.
Yeah.
But I loved Boulder. I was kind of I'd gotten into racing bikes. Started out mountain biking and then got into cycling. And I'd always run just from soccer and kind of my upbringing. And so I started racing bikes in Austin, more as just like a way to get all of my frustration out, with my
your sexual frustration almost
position.
literally.
Right. And so when I moved up there, it's a huge just mecca for endurance sports. So I started racing bikes there.
What are some endurance sports? So cycling, you're saying, is one?
Yeah, cycling's a big one. Running, marathon, ultra marathon, those kind of distance.
There's a lot of time involved typically.
Well, and I even kind of lump in 10K, half marathon into endurance. Anything that's like you can't run just all out as fast as you possibly can and survive through to the end. I kind of term that as an endurance.
That's good. I like that. That's sport. A good qualifier.
Right. And so I started racing bikes there. Got into triathlon. I landed a job really quickly at a running store.
Really?
I had never sold a pair of running shoes in my entire life.
Yeah.
I had a football coach in college that thought it was really funny because I was just this kind of like crunchy hippie kid on the team. He thought it was really funny that he got me a summer job at a Western wear store. So I went into this job interview at this running shop in Boulder, and I was like, "Yeah, I worked at a Western wear.
Have you heard of Boots?"
Store once." And they just looked at me like, "What? Excuse me?" Bottom line, I could talk to people. I used to teach 7th grade,
some stuff.
Students. I can talk anyone's ear off.
Yeah,
and I could sell them just about anything.
Amazing.
So I landed the job.
Did you care that it was a change of careers in a sense, or it was
yeah. I only knew 1 year of a. I never viewed teaching as what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
I thought it was kind of an exciting thing to try out and see if I could actually, impact America's youth.
Right. Which is a great aim, mind you.
Right. Yeah.
It sucks you weren't able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm totally doing it now. All these.
Well, it's different now.
Totally, and I don't know if I call them youth, but they were at one time. Right.
We're youth at heart. Yeah.
But the liquid enables me to really get to the core of.
It's true. It shaves the other layers away.
Exactly.
It's right there. But so, how long were you doing the sales stuff?
So I did that. The whole time I was there, a little over 2 years. Yeah, sold shoes there. Got to really see a lot more just business from a retail standpoint.
Yeah.
The owners there were very active in day to day, and they were very open, transparent with the financial aspects of the business, and so I had a lot of fun there. Learned a lot, and it actually landed me a gig in Austin when I decided to move back to Austin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I love cold weather, but it's really tough to ride a bike outside in cold weather.
Yeah.
And I was really I felt like I kind of had a future in this whole racing thing.
Because I read that you're a triathlon. Is that how?
Yeah. So that's what that's what I really got into in Boulder was. So I did long distance, so half Ironman and full Ironman.
God damn, man.
And I loved it. And it was where I met all the beer people that really got me into the industry.
Which is ironic to me, right?
It is when you hear it, but if you go to a race or even a training group or anything like that, they don't do anything without beer around.
No kidding.
So it's a shocking. Most people, I think, are much like myself. They exercise because you can drink and eat, without really having to worry about gaining weight or you're not,
Absolutely.
kind of keeps you healthy.
And it's good for running, right?
Absolutely.
If it didn't get you drunk, it's just kind of pure energy.
It is,
right?
It's one of the most bioavailable carbohydrates you can find.
Exactly.
So,
So okay, that makes some sense. There's There's a utility to it, which
Yes.
is really, really good. I'll say that about anything. Bourbon utility out of bourbon.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a point at which it becomes less helpful when you're trying to run straight, but
right.
Still pretty good. So you get a job in Austin doing...
I was working with a company called Rogue Running. So
Okay.
they were, at the time, their company serviced groups. So if you want to run a marathon, right? But you don't want to do it on your own. You need a coach and you need support group. You sign up for this marathon group, and then there's 30 other people in the group with you. You have coached workouts, supported long runs, the whole gig. So it's kind of like, it's like having your own private, personal trainer, coach, but you have this whole group of people that are all doing the same thing. So it's a really neat. And at the time, Runtex was the one running store in town, and Rogue was really, one of the major training companies in town. And so I went to work for them, and I wrote curriculum. So I wrote the training programs for a lot of these, and I developed some triathlon programs, and absolutely loved it. But having come from a city of 90,000 people, right, Boulder, there were 8 different running stores, like different companies that had running shops there.
Right, out of 90,000, which is
90,000 people, And I moved here, and at the time there was 600,000 people here, and one running store, one company that sold running shoes.
Yeah.
And so, we'd started talking within the Rogue group, the ownership, just so we have 3,000 people that run with us.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't we open a running store?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a captive audience that needs shoes.
Let's do this.
Yeah, so we connected with a couple other entrepreneurs in town, one of which had started a women's fitness boutique called Betty Sport, which is now, they closed down, I think, after Lululemon and some of the major, major chains moved in. But we partnered with them to kind of bring a little bit more of the retail expertise. And then I ran the day-to-day, so I got to help open the shop. Was the general manager, hired the whole staff.
And still developing curriculum too? So
still doing coaching, and absolutely loved it. And I got connected with a huge network of people in Austin that were kind of similarly minded in that they love to exercise and they love to drink beer.
So it's interesting is that I love this about Austin, and maybe this is like this and maybe New York, LA, whatever, but people really like to have their booze here.
Yes.
But they also like to burn that shit off.
Yeah.
I love that because it's this wonderful contrast, but it's a perfect balance, right?
Yeah.
Because you would just think that Texas, right? I mean, not to point fingers at Houston or Dallas, but they've got a big weight problem with a lot of the populations in those cities. Now they're much larger, so I get that. They're larger, but it's a square footage, right? There's so many more miles of Houston. But Austin, I think why it works is that we know how to play. We know how to really play.
Yeah.
But we also know how to take the time out to keep ourselves healthy.
Right.
And I think Boulder's the same way too, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's what drew me back to Austin was that, Boulder's great, and I loved that element of it. I think there were 16 breweries there.
Amazing.
2 of my roommates worked at breweries. We were every day at the end of work, we would gather in a tap room somewhere and have a couple pints and then go do whatever else we were going to do that night. And I just loved it because you'd go into a brewery and you'd see dudes in cycling gear. You'd see people that just finished a run. You'd see someone come in, that was working up on a ski mountain or, it was such a cool, diverse crew of people that were coming together over beer. And I just love that. Love that. And
it's like you're working for the weekend. No, I'm working for this beer.
Yeah.
Right? It is.
I'm working for every day. Yeah. And same thing, you go in at noon into a tap room and see a lot of the same thing. People just breaking for lunch, having a beer, having lunch, going back to work.
Amazing.
And it was very responsible culture is what I really fell in love with in Boulder is that Boulder drinks a lot.
Yeah.
But it's also there's not a lot of drunk driving there. I mean, granted, the city's small enough that you can pretty much walk everywhere, but it's a very responsible city in consumption. Austin, not quite.
We're trying.
We're working on getting there.
We're really trying, but the city council's
city council's making it tough.
We'd rather you drive so we can pull you over.
Right.
No, that's stupid.
Right.
But we're working. But we're a very large city. And surprisingly, we grew out of our pants way too quick.
Oh man,
right?
We tried to fight it for way too long.
Yeah, for sure.
People kept coming. We're like, oh no, it's not getting overcrowded here. It's not busy.
No,
we don't need infrastructure upgrades. No,
infrastructure.
Why would I-35 need to have more than 2 lanes going one direction?
And Mopac, and all of it, man.
We only need 2 highways, right?
Yeah, well, we got 1 million, 2 million. No, we don't yet, but it'll get to that point.
Right.
But the drinking and that balance is. I think it's a thread in Austin. It really, Austin proper anyway, whatever that might mean. But
yeah, definitely. I think your areas of town that are, at least what I kind of term as, Austin proper.
Yeah.
That are actually fully functional. You can go to a grocery store, you can go to, everything you would need, drugstore, whatever, all of that without having to,
like that.
drive 45 minutes to get
exactly,
to it.
Right. Like in Houston, because it's so big.
Right.
But so you're doing this running thing, and I imagine that you start thinking about needing something for you. Is that kind of how it happens? That's how it happened for me, right? Where it's like, I've learned a lot, and this has been great, but I'm ready to do this myself now.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it came to be?
Yeah, and I mean, oddly enough, I never had aspirations of opening a brewery or working in the beer industry or any of that. But to me, like, I've always loved beer, and in Boulder, everything I did, beer was around that, right? So my lifestyle, my extracurricular activity, everything, it was always just kind of a common thread in that.
Yeah.
So, I come to Austin, had this great opportunity to be a part of the startup, really learn a lot, and I had this great idea, like, we have these fun runs, once a week, these kind of like happy hour runs, but no breweries would ever partner with us,
Really?
And we weren't asking for anything for free. We were just like, hey, could we develop a relationship where we constantly have your product?
Yeah, it's so strange.
Work something out. Well, there were just no breweries here.
Well, that's
and so
right.
It's that classic, like, I always hate saying it this way, but all of the professors in college that I had in the business school were always like, the goal of an entrepreneur is to find that problem that hasn't been solved.
The gap.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you solve the problem. Find the hole and fill it,
Yeah.
And sure shit, there I am, like, asking over and over, trying to find, anyone other than fucking Shiner or Michelob Ultra to, sponsor our races or hook us up. And no one.
With this,
and that was when the whole, like, the light went off of like, oh, here's that hole that I keep hearing about, this problem that I can't solve myself.
Is this like 2006, 7?
This was 2007, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because I'm trying to think about Austin, what it was like then.
Yeah, so like Independence had like just opened.
Right.
You had Live Oak.
Yeah.
You have Real Ale out in the Hill Country. The Bitter End was still here, the little brew pub downtown.
Yeah.
North by Northwest brew pub. But
not a huge.
That was it. Yeah.
Especially for how many people are here.
Yeah. And now, fast forward now, we've got like 28 licensed breweries in Austin. Yeah.
God, I can't even. And the distilleries are even more than that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's a total night and day. I mean, now we're coming up maybe about 10 years later, so it's about time we evolved a little bit in that sense.
I agree.
But so how did you? I read that you learned how to ferment and stuff. Were you were doing home brew the whole time, or?
Yeah, so I started brewing in college. Actually, is part of that whole can't drink alcohol thing. My buddies and I figured out. We were 19 at the time. We figured out that you can buy all the ingredients to make beer without being of legal drinking age because there's no alcohol in it until...
See, that's good. That's out of necessity.
Yeah, so it was not amazing. Like, I want a home brew. It was more like, we want to get drunk.
Give me a sugar and a yeast, damn it.
Everyone's got their eyes on us at the university, so how are we going to do that? Well, we'll just make it at home.
Amazing.
So that was where it started. Boulder was where I kind of really dug into more of the process and recipe formulation and actually trying to make it like taste good, not just be as high alcohol as I could possibly, you know. And that was where I got introduced to the beer industry. I didn't even know that existed. I had no idea there were like breweries and warehouses in the middle of a city or down the corner,
Interesting.
All I had ever seen was like the Coors facility in Golden, massive,
Huge,
and it was
different,
super cool. But I didn't know there was something different, smaller than that.
You look at that, right? It's like if all you know of cars are Mercedes, you're like, well, shit, that's like kind of out of reach for me a little bit, But then you see like a Honda Civic, like, there we go.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Now we're talking. And so that's kind of where, honestly, that's where we kind of layer in, is that maybe you do, but I didn't have multi-million-dollar investments into you have to do things at a smaller scale, but tighter, but still have a vision,
Yeah.
And you don't have to have millions of dollars to do this stuff now.
No, not at all.
I guess to do it huge.
Right.
But it's not about that. You just take those steps and you kind of grow.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So the home brewing kind of starts to get some momentum. You understand it because you get a science background. So you start thinking about, I want it to taste good now.
Right.
And you've been brewing in Austin too when you moved back?
Yeah, I homebrewed in Austin. I had just fallen in love with more of the utilitarian aspect of like, if shit hits the fan, I got my own booze.
Dude,
right?
that is a really important question. Strip society of socioeconomic status, strip it of a currency, strip it of shelter even. All you need is food, and everybody's going to want some kind of booze.
Yeah.
So, well, not everybody, but most people. So when the shit hits the fan, like you said, you and I can make booze out of stuff.
Yeah.
I never thought that was a talent until I think of it like that.
right.
I never thought it was something that, maybe this is marketable. Well, not right now, but it's marketable if the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I don't think a lot of people get to go through their early adulthood.
Yeah.
When you're out of college, like, you're, depending on your kind of family situation, like, my parents weren't feeding me money. Like, it was, I'm on my own, and you learn a lot when you can't go out to eat whenever you want to.
Right.
You don't have a credit card. Like, that wasn't even a reality to me. Yeah. So I cooked, you find out how to cook like on the cheap, how to do that stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, wow, turns out you can make beer at home for like 25 cents a beer. Yeah.
Amazing.
That sounds freaking great.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's what really latched me on to the whole alcohol industry.
Yeah.
Is that, at least at the time, I mean, the landscape has changed dramatically, but at the time, I mean, you didn't have to have very much money to get something like that off the ground, Like, you look at the greats like Ken Grossman at Sierra Nevada, welded all these old, like, dairy tanks together himself, pretty much bootstrapped the whole thing.
Right.
Look where they are now.
Amazing.
I mean, I didn't quite have that bootstrapping of a story, but,
I can't handle a torch very well, personally.
Right. But, most of the breweries that are opening right now, I mean, minimum of $1 million investment going into it. And they're beautiful. These, like, shiny, turnkey. I started out the brewery with $200,000. And
that's still a lot.
It's still, to me, that's a
lot.
Fortune, you know? But there's no way that we would have learned what we've learned had we not had to figure out how to make things work on the cheap,
Totally,
when you don't just have an endless amount of cash.
Right. When your hands are tied, I always think of it as like Chopped, right? I love that show.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, here are 3 to 5 ingredients. All right, cool. And you have 30 minutes. What? Oh, shit. What are you talking about? Like, and you can't use any other things. Like, well, fuck. All right, fine. You know, and then you learn to adapt.
Right.
It's like, I can't buy a massive fermenter, 1,000-gallon fermenter that's jacketed for 20 grand. Great. Well, I'll figure it out otherwise.
Right.
But that's a beautiful skill, because when you're painted into a corner, or when someone corners you, or the industry corners you, or your success or revenue, all of that, you can fight it or you can fight it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can just sit and kind of knock it out and figure out how to innovate in such a tight spot, or you can fucking walk away. But that's the kind of people, that's what it takes, right? You can't walk away from it.
Yeah.
It gets real hard sometimes, as
stressful,
you know.
And
it's totally stressful. And then dealing with the feds and stuff.
My
Jesus.
God.
It's terrible. So when did Hops and Grain as a brand and as a concept, when did that fully kind of come into focus?
So that I started, actually had the plan put together. I'd done, a lot of, people always laugh when I say I'd done a lot of market research, which was not just going around and drinking a lot of beer, but actually, like, volunteering at breweries, popping in, offering to help, but not going in just like, hey, I want to open a brewery. Can you tell me how to do this, and this? It's more just like, I just want to get my hands dirty. I want to figure this stuff out. And I'm a hard worker, so I'll help you out.
It's amazing. Yeah. Because think about having not ever done that and still drink beer all the time, or drink bourbon, right? Without ever having smelled it.
Right.
In all those stages, without ever getting it on your shoes, without ever staining your hands. Think about how different it would be. Like, putting you in it from a sensory perspective, it changes the whole thing.
Yeah.
It totally does.
Absolutely.
It does.
To the point that, like, I'll drive around neighborhoods in cities that we're visiting, and you can smell if, like, someone, I know when there's barley being mixed with water somewhere. It's just like in the air, and
you're like a police dog.
I know, right? Sniff it out.
That's amazing. So what was, when you thought about what you wanted to contribute, we'll go brand first, right? Because you there's an aesthetic you have to establish as well,
right?
In addition to what that flavor might be for the beers. But what did you say was like, this is the thing that I want to contribute to brewing or the industry of beer?
Yeah, so, for me, the biggest thing that I found at Rogue when I was there is that, there is a huge group of customers and just humans out there that love to commit to a brand.
Sure.
And they love it for the story, they love it for the performance of the product, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And as much shit as we give, like, large beer brands, that is what they thrive on and have forever.
Absolutely.
That, like, I am married to Miller Lite and I don't drink anything but Miller Lite,
Yeah, for
that
sure.
That customer. And that's
brand
what you
loyalty.
have in running. Like, you run your first marathon in a pair of whatever, Asics something or other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're probably going to buy that same pair of shoes as many times as you can because the association,
the connection. Yeah, it's good.
And, what I thought so deeply about, at least my time at Rogue, was like, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to fully, like, commit to opening a brewery, it's not going to be one of those things that I'm like, doing, at night. I have a full-time job, and I just kind of go in and, I'm going to commit to it, and I'm going to commit to it because I think this town needs more brands that they can latch onto.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be local in the sense of like I was raised in,
right.
in Austin, but like I am here and I'm committed to the city and I want to make something that people latch onto. Yeah. And so, at the time, this was really at the beginning of what I like to call the dark ages of beer geekdom.
The dark ages?
When people started to analyze and look at beer to a level that takes away like so much possibility for enjoyment.
Right.
Because it's just, the whole thing is
they overanalyze it.
It's completely overanalyzed. And
Enjoy
I hated that. And what I loved about the running community and the cycling community with beer, nobody gave a shit about that.
They just want to enjoy it, right?
It's like, it's got alcohol in it, right?
Yeah.
And it's clean and tastes good. Perfect.
Done.
I'll have one of those.
Deal.
And that was the crowd that I always latched onto with beer. And so I wanted to really bring something like that to Austin that had a very specific, market focus. And that was our market, was people that were active, people that got outside, that played disc golf, that mountain biked.
That's really good.
But that also really enjoyed, they lived as hard as they partied.
Yeah.
And I think there's when you exercise and you're, committed to that, I think you carry all of your other consumption with a different level of responsibility.
Absolutely.
Because you are always committed to like, oh, well, I got to get up tomorrow and do this.
Absolutely.
So doesn't mean I'm not going to get drunk or I'm not going to have a good time.
But I'm going to pay for it in the morning if I go too far.
Right, right. I know when to say, all right, this is, because tomorrow I want to go for a bike ride and then have more beers after that and not just feel, you
got to sustain it, man.
Right. You got to carry through. So that was really where it started. And I found all of our initial investment through runners that I had coached in the running industry.
That's amazing.
Because I was able to pitch this concept of like, this is a brand and it's simple. Yeah. It's called hops and grain. Because those are the two major ingredients that really impact beer.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to be something crazy. We're not trying to make like some new style of beer that no one's ever come up with.
Right.
But we're going to commit to the quality of it because we want people to commit to our brand and then keep coming back to our brand because it's always the same. They know when they buy it at the store, or they buy it at the bar, or they buy it at a convenience store, or an H-E-B or a Whole Foods. Like they know what they're getting.
Right.
And that's what major beer has that a lot of small brands don't.
Never disappoints.
You can buy it in Japan. You can buy it in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
Coors Light's going to taste the same.
For sure. Which is actually a great thing. And you think about manufacturing maybe computers or cars, right?
Sure.
What do you want? You want conformity and you want consistency.
Yeah.
And so people think, now this is one of the things that maybe I appreciate about agave spirits maybe in some bourbons. But when I go to buy a bottle of bourbon for under $25, I'm going to reach for Buffalo Trace because it's going to taste the same every time. I will never be disappointed.
Right.
Even if it's somebody exercising some kinds of creative muscle in their head, right? But still, at the end of the day, tastes the same. And people like that. And I think that's a key to any good brand, whether it's liquor, whether it's food, is that on social, you got your voice, you're consistent, you're not erratic,
right.
You balance the playing with the working.
Yep.
Then the product itself, it looks the same always, it tastes the same always, and then you can always get it. Like that's it. I mean, it's not so difficult, but making that stuff come into motion and being consistent from a process perspective.
Right.
Now that's the challenge.
Yeah. I think people confuse innovation with consistency.
Yes, I think you're right.
Like innovation does not mean just throwing shit against the wall and seeing what sticks every single time. Like you have to innovate far more, to make something taste the same and even better every single time you make it than to just make something new every single time.
That's absolutely
that's the easy way out in my opinion.
You're totally right. Because being accountable for things in the same way all the time, like inefficiencies and stuff, or efficiencies, not inefficiencies. Like that's an art. The Japanese have mastered that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just, you never think that it's an important thing because you want to like fall in love with the brand. It looks so good. It tastes so good. You want to think like it was just a massive unloading of emotion into the still or into the fermenter. But it's not. It's calculated. Sorry. But it is. It's fucking way calculated.
Very calculated.
It's totally calculated. Yeah. So what did you decide in terms of flavor? Was there something that you really strive to keep? That was your vision with the flavor. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
So I was really struck, at least in Boulder, I was really struck at how I felt like that entire town is very culturally relevant.
Yeah.
And cultural relevance is different wherever you are.
Sure. And it's relative for a reason, right?
Right. But Boulder is very white.
Very white.
Very white.
I mean,
at least in 2004 when I was living there.
Exceedingly white.
It is very, very white.
Yes.
Very healthy and very wealthy.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, that is Boulder in a nutshell. It's also, you've got all of your Trustafarians. You've got, it's an edgy community.
Sure.
But it's also somewhat one-dimensional. And so the products that you find there, the stores that you find there, the number of health food shops, the number of, dispensaries now that, they all appeal to that specific culture, which is
monochromatic culture.
Right. And what I felt like in Austin is, there's a lot of the same thing going on here, but there's also a very consistent theme in regards to weather, right? It's pretty hot here all the time. So developing beers, developing flavors, all of those things have to be relevant, in my opinion. If you want people to buy your beer all the time and to be that brand that they always have in the fridge, they're not going to wait in line, 5 hours for a bottle release that you have. But every time they want to introduce a friend to Austin beer, or every time they go to the grocery store, you want your beer to be on the shopping list.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, for me to do that, it's got to be relevant. It's got to be beer that people want to drink.
Yeah.
And so what I started to look at was, what are the different cultures that have really made the hill country what they are? German influence is huge.
Oh, yeah.
It's where Shiner came from.
Shiner,
so much of the hill country has that really deep German Czech influence. So one of the beers we launched with was a German style alt beer. It's a bizarre style. A lot of people hadn't heard of it, which is why we didn't really care too much to talk about it's an alt beer. It's a German style brown ale.
Okay.
And people grabbed it up immediately. It's 5% ABV. It's very crisp, very dry, but full of flavor. So it's good with food. It's good in the sun. It's good in the winter. It's good.
Caters to the circumstances.
Yeah. It's culturally relevant here, I felt like. And then, one was the second beer that we launched with was more just an ode to Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Yeah.
That was the first craft beer that I really fell in love with. It was during a fish show, on on tour
How
with
did
fish.
I know that Trey Anastasio was going to make it away?
I know, right?
Into this conversation.
And, in the parking lot. And I can still, all the sensory components of that experience, I still remember all of them. There was that tinge of BO, a little bit of herb, marijuana in the air. There was BO, there was patchouli, there was sandalwood, there was Nag Champa, and then I cracked open a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and just an explosion of hop character.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it just blew my mind. And
it's
of course
whipping
now,
to me. That's what whipping is. Basically a fish show, right?
Yes, absolutely. And now you fast forward, and Sierra Nevada is just like a gateway hoppy beer, But at the time, that was a big, bitter, in-your-face, hoppy beer.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. And so I really wanted to bring a little piece of that to the brewery. So our first beer, was very much modeled after that style, that kind of Pacific Northwest, hop forward pale ale.
And you guys have how many SKUs now? I think there was 5.
We do six year-round now.
6 year-round. So walk them through.
So we do our Pale Dog, which was that first one, and Alteration, which is the alt beer. We do the one they call Zoe, which is our hands down our most popular pale lager.
The orange label, right?
The orange can. We do Greenhouse IPA, which is a really cool. Every batch we use different varieties, dry hopping. So the flavor and aroma shift, periodically, not dramatically, but you get a little bit of variation with each batch. Then we do a porter, Baltic-style porter called Porter Culture. It's the purple can. And then a Pale Mosaic is our most recent release.
These are all can format?
Yeah, all in cans, 12-ounce cans.
What was that? What was your decision to do can versus maybe tall boys or versus bottles?
Yeah, so there were a number of things that we kind of approached with every decision and still do to this day. Like our kind of, if you want to call them pillars, ultimately, they're the community, our industry, and the environment.
Yeah.
And so everything that we do, we look at those three areas to ask the question of, is this going to be good for all three of those things?
Yeah.
Is this going to help our community or give our community more enjoyment or more connection? Is it going to prolong our industry? Is it going to add more attention to the industry? And then is it going to be good for the environment? And so cans, there was no question at all.
Yeah.
Like our community, we're outside all the time. There's festivals all the time. There's water everywhere. You can't have glass in it. You can't even have it if you want to, you know? So cans were a natural fit there. From an industry standpoint, quality and shelf stability are the things that are going to make the craft beer industry survive.
Sure. People will come back.
Yeah, they're going to keep coming back because, it's consistent. It's quality. And cans are the best packaged container for beer. There's no light that can come through,
right?
Like there's with glass. The seam on the top is so much tighter than a can or a bottle cap, and there's less headspace. And then
better efficiencies,
right? So a lot more efficiencies. And on the environmental side, they're not necessarily more recyclable, but the way we approached it was take the scenario of art. I went out with my buddies. We had a 12-pack of long neck bottles. We drank them all down by the river. Now we've got to lug all that stuff out versus we just emptied 12 cans of beer, crush them down.
Got it.
So if your closest recycle bin is back at the trailhead, but you've got a trash can where you are at the river, what are you more likely to throw in the trash can because you don't want to lug it back?
Right.
Bottles.
The heavier.
So cans they lend themselves more to recyclability because it's easier and we're all lazy and you can put it in your pocket. And,
absolutely.
And just from an overall, from an entire supply chain, you look at not only once it gets to us and we fill it, but then we take it to a retail account. They stack. They take up less floor space.
Right.
They chill down faster. They merchandise better. You can actually use them like bricks and stack stuff around, whereas a 6-pack of bottles make it a little more difficult for that. And then, the recyclability component is another huge piece.
So how long have you guys been in operation now?
We had our 4-year anniversary in October of last year.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
How do you folks feel about it? I'm curious how your dad feels about it. I bet he's loved it.
It's a trip. Right? They love it. Yeah, they absolutely love it. They were, when I told them what I was doing, I think they were still just under this like, wow, our son started teaching and went down a career path. And then he sold all of his belongings and moved to Boulder. And now he's back in Texas, which is great. And now he says he's going to open a brewery.
What?
But yeah, they're probably my biggest fans.
Do you ever bounce ideas off of him?
All the time.
I do. And
I get text messages from my dad with pictures of beers from a beer store in Abilene where they still live. He's like, "What do you think of this? Is this good? Is this good? Hey, I just tried this. This is pretty cool."
That's so cool.
So yeah,
right?
it's awesome. Yeah.
I never had conversons about booze with my dad.
Oh no, it was not in my house as a kid.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much right there with you. Like my mom, here's a bit of personal stuff. Like my mom grew up in an alcoholic household.
Okay.
And thus, like, she decided in her 30s, like, I'm not drinking anymore. There's some looming risk over the sword of Damocles, I think is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
And so that was not a thing. And then my dad, he wasn't really a margarita guy. 1 or 2 margaritas once a month, maybe that kind of thing. But so since I started doing this stuff, and I get to ask questions about business, because my dad's been in the food business for a long, long time. I'm a good guy to bounce ideas off of, you know? And it's just so cool, like, that our relationship has transformed and evolved in that way. Because now he's like, well, what do you think you should do? These kinds of things where the dynamic is we're peers now, right? Because it was never like that. And that's maybe something everybody faces with their parents, is that you grow up, they're there to point down, not to somehow make you feel bad, but to teach you a lesson, because that's what they're there for.
Right.
But then at some point, it's like, you're eye to eye talking about fucking tequila, or you're talking about gin, or whatever. It's so strange, right? Yeah. But it's lovely. It's a lovely evolution.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Was your sister? What is she in the industry at all?
No, not at all. She is. She started out as a teacher. My family is just full of educators.
Teachers,
she got married literally the weekend after she graduated from college. Graduated in 4 years. We took completely different paths.
Yeah.
I love my sister to death, but she was always the straight A student, and I was always the kid in the back corner burning something or getting in trouble. And so out of college, her husband went to optometry school.
Oh, okay.
So she taught to kind of support them through optometry school.
Yeah.
Always under the assumption that as soon as he got done, like they were having kids.
Oh,
and
man.
She's got 3 kids, full-time mom, and
I can't do that.
Oh, I can barely keep track of myself.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Being responsible for 3 small humans. Yeah, I don't know.
But that becomes your business.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because it's like the beer, like each product line you've got. So you got 6 in total. That's 6 kids.
Yeah.
They have a different
and you have to develop them
personality.
all, to go to market and to,
And then you send them off to elementary, send them off to school that first day and see how they work. And they either evolve or they fucking flunk out. Like that's exactly how that stuff works.
Yeah.
So I think a wonderful note to end on is that, I guess, so you talked about Mike Sanders for a little bit. I guess we probably know many of the same people.
Oh,
but we
I'm
just
sure.
have never crossed paths.
Right.
Because admittedly, I'm not as much of a beer guy as most people. It's about efficiency.
Sure.
So now it's a bourbon. It's a little bit less to drink than a beer. But it seems like, so you probably Steven then. Yep. Steven Robbins.
Absolutely.
He has managed, and I will clarify which charity this is, but it's for children's charity. Is that right? Do you remember which one it is for the Dad Bods calendar?
I don't remember the exact one now.
I'll clarify with him. But they had this idea, or Steven had this idea, an asinine idea, frankly, that people would want to see the dad bodish physiques of Austin's premier bartenders.
Yes.
So you have a wonderful dream team of people, the likes of Jeff Boley, Josh Loving, Justin Elliott, Michael Sanders, as we talked about, obviously Stephen Robbins, Michael Phillips. Great group.
Absolutely.
And in most cases, they are in this calendar exposing said dad bod in a truly haunting manner. Jesus Christ. It's like, God, and I got to say this, and since we won't show the picture, I don't think Steve will get too mad, but thinking of Chris Bostic in a fairy outfit in a blue bonnet, a patch of blue bonnets, still haunts my.
I know, you can't erase that.
I tried. Right. I had to get up in there and edit that, and so like in their high res photos, right. And I'm like, man, that nipple's got too much of the green screen outline, and I'd have to get like at the pixel level of Chris Bostic's nipple. God. I swear to God, I was like,
don't envy that.
I will never be gay ever. Like I can't. Like this getting in that level of granular. But anyway, so this calendar is coming to fruition. I think Steven hopes to have it ready for print on Friday. And we're going to have 12 amazing models, 12 months of the year, and a release party at Hops and Grain on the 1st of February, right? Which Monday. Is that Monday.
Yeah.
What are we in store for there?
So it's going to be cool. Each of those month models have crafted a cocktail that we'll be serving there. We'll be
great.
In standard dad bod form.
Yes.
There'll be grills set up outside cooking sausages and burgers
amazing.
and the like. We'll have some of our beer there.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of wine has been provided as well. So
you expect a big turnout for it? I think
so. Yeah. Well, we're shutting our tap room down, to
cool.
the public. So it's kind of, the whole invite group that Steven has sent out to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we should have about 75 or 100 people there.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be a trip.
You're going to be there, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll be there.
It's going to be, again, haunting.
Very. Very.
Chilling. Some of these pictures. But I also at the same time cannot wait for people to see. And the one thing I want to call out here that people won't know, I made one prosthetic adjustment to one of the models.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was wearing particularly tight shorts, and you've seen Christmas Vacation?
Yes.
Right. So remember how there's this scene. This is the point of inspiration. There's this scene where Randy Quaid and Chevy Chase are walking. It's a straight shot. They're like in Walmart buying gifts and stuff. And
right.
Randy Quaid picks up these big bags of dog food, crushes the light bulbs. He's wearing like these polyester pants. And for some reason, you get a whole fucking like huge, massive schlong shot. And it's hilarious. It's like a fucking prop,
Right.
So that's the inspiration for one of these models. And I hope you guys can pick out which one it is.
That's awesome.
An amazingly inappropriate enhancement. I took some liberties to enhance said subject. So it's been wonderful chatting with you, Josh. Man, I'm actually, it's too bad we didn't get to chat or rather meet earlier because I feel like we hit it off, man. So I'm looking forward to seeing you at the event on the 1st.
Yeah,
I think
had a blast.
It'll be really good, and I'll definitely say hey if you're going to be there, of course.
Cool.
So it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much
it's
for
great
joining
chatting with
me,
you as well.
Oh, so one thing that we do have to talk about. Of course, a beer guy. We all know that you guys love bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, as it is protocol for each of the episodes, you've picked a wonderful cask strength bourbon here, which is the E.H. Taylor. This is at 67%. Insanely hot, but really beautiful. Tastes like Stag to me. It might be the same mash bill.
Yeah.
Some of the guys might correct me, but what do you think?
I think it's great. Yeah.
It's really,
you hit it on
really
nice.
nice.
I started out neat, and then I did cut a little water into it.
How'd the water help?
It really opened it up a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Because you get some oils in suspension, as you know, and then when
right.
you push that stuff in. But at the end of the day, what's that drink for you?
Honestly, and you'll laugh at this, but Booker's.
Oh, that's not laugh. That's amazing.
I mean, and I say that to a lot of people. They're like, "Whoa, yeah, going right at it, huh? For your daily whiskey."
Well, some cojones on that.
And if I'm really angry, I'll go Noah's Mill. If I've had a really stressful day, I'll dive right into that one.
Something real corn heavy, right? Well, it's been a pleasure chatting, Josh. Man, thanks so much for sharing some bourbon with me. Can't wait to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
See you, man. So it is all about balance, isn't it? You exercise enough, you drink enough, and the two things all come out in the wash and even out in the end. What'd you guys think of that conversation with Josh? It was fun. I had a great time chatting with Josh. He's easy to talk to, the kind of guy that you want to drink a beer with. No fucking wonder he's in the beer industry, started a brewery. You'd want to hang out with him. You'd want to run with him. I don't even run, but I want to run with him. The thing is, it's always nice to highlight another entrepreneur. He thinks about process. He thinks about branding. He thinks about what the world needs, what beers the world needs. And it's all about consistency. It's all about meeting expectations of the people that count on you and count on your brand. And Hops and Grain is a quintessential Austin and Texas brand. I can't wait to see what comes out of that brewery in the future. And if you're able to join us tonight, there is the Dad Bod calendar release. As I mentioned in a previous episode, Stephen Robbins so wonderfully articulately combined 12 Dad Bod Rubenesque figures into a single calendar that is both haunting and chilling. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to Show to V. I can't express my appreciation and my humility enough for all of you who give me comments about what you think about the show, people that want to step onto the show, everybody that wants to chat. I want to get to every single one of you, and I want to learn everything I can about every single person. So thanks again for listening to Show to V. It doesn't matter what you're doing, drinking beer, running, biking, swimming, although those may be very tiring, please keep dancing.